Hi, I'm Karen Rice. Welcome to part 2 of how to paint depth and distance in acrylic landscapes. This is a real-time tutorial, so I hope you enjoy it and find it useful in your acrylic painting, whether you're a beginner or you've been painting for a while. A link for part 1 can be found in the description below. If you'd like to have a full list of the materials and colours I'm using, please check out the description below. You'll also find a link for the photograph. So, shall we get started? So as you can see there, I've painted the background and middle ground, and I'm painting the foreground. I'm not using a brush though, I'm using some scrolled up plastic. So if you're just watching this now and you haven't seen part 1, I suggest go to the link below in the description and check out part 1. But if you have joined me from part 1, I think you're really going to enjoy this. This creates so much texture. It's very similar to what we did with the foreground trees. So as you can see, I've got very scrunched up plastic bag in my hand here, using white titanium paint and tapping very gently onto the trees there, halfway, sort of middle to halfway down. And if you don't want to do that, it's quite messy, or you want to try with a brush, I'm stippling with the white titanium with a small round brush there. So there's lots of options here. You can also use a scourer or even a natural sponge as well, even Q-tips, a few Q-tips all bunched together. So there's lots of different ways of creating this amazing Queen Anne's lace, and you can see already just by putting this white on how it brings everything forward in the foreground, creating depth in the painting. It's amazing, and it's so much fun to do, and you don't really need any drawing skills for this. Just an open mind and just having fun, really, just sort of letting go a little bit. As you can see, I'm just using a scourer there and just tapping on a little bit more white titanium paint to create the texture and details of the Queen Anne's lace, bringing the foreground forward even more. So I'm actually going to be painting the daisies now, so they can be a bit tricky. So what I would suggest is draw circles, little circles first, and you can draw little ellipses as well, which is I've done there. So they're a bit squished because of the foreshortening. So they're the ones that look a little bit, they're turning away from you, and the angles are different. So just try to keep these the different sort of angles with the daisies. It just creates a little bit of an element of realism. But these daisies, because I'm going to be painting some warm centers, really will bring everything forward. There'll be even more detail with the Queen Anne's lace as well. So I'm painting them here just with white titanium paint. Now, for how to paint the petals, so this is what I've done. You're literally just going from top to bottom with little lines and to the sideways and then diagonally, and this way you get a perfect sort of looking daisy. Because sometimes when I've been teaching my students, they'll do a few petals and then some will be a bit skew width, and this is a way of making them look a little bit more symmetrical and an easier way of painting the petals. And once you've got used to that idea, you'll do what I do and just sort of paint it on, sort of thing, quick, and try to have some petals longer than the other. Try to have the ends a little bit pointy. Sometimes it's quite difficult, especially when you're painting on a very textured surface like this. The underpainting is really textured, but it's just an impression. I don't want to sort of do too much detail here. It's not a botanical painting at all. It's much more of an impressionistic painting, but I'm just working my way around now, painting these daisies just with the white titanium, but it's not too thick, so you can see some of the underpainting coming through, and that kind of creates some shadows on the petals of the daisies as well. So I'm spattering now the daisies and the Queen Anne's lace with slightly watered down acrylic paint. As you can see, I've masked out the sort of middle ground and the sky and mountains with some paper towel. It's just to create some texture and details. If you don't want to spatter, that's absolutely fine. You can stipple and create little marks with your brush, with a small brush as well. There's lots of ways to do all these different techniques. So I've allowed my painting to dry. I'm using a small round brush and some cadmium yellow, and I'm just filling in the centres here, wet on dry, and creating sort of more sort of flat looking circles, but also ellipses as well. So it creates a little bit of depth and it looks like they are going away from you as well. And I've added a little bit of brown in there just to create a little bit of darker tonal values just here and there. But don't worry too much, have fun with it. Just paint little circles in the middle of your daisies. I'm just painting a little bit of shadow and detail in the centre of the daisies there, just to bring them to life. Using a small round detailer brush, using a mixture of brown and a little touch of green. I've allowed my painting to dry again. I'm using my scourer again to print on some darks, that's Prussian blue and a little bit of burnt umber or burnt sienna or even yellow ochre, whatever you have. I'm just lightly tapping this on sort of at the top part of the Queen Anne's lace. You've got that lovely contrast which really brings them forward, creating that depth in the painting. I'm trying to keep it random, don't overdo it, don't have a dark line going all the way from the left hand corner to the sort of middle top right hand side, because otherwise it'll cut that foreground off and detach it from the painting. So you want to leave some areas where you haven't got the dark so it leads your eye through. It's quite a nice compositional trick there as well. I'm also tapping very gently on top of the Queen Anne's lace so you can see some darts coming through as well. As you saw, I put the darks as well along the sort of edge where you've got the foliage in front of the water, and it really pulls those trees forward away from the water, which is furthest away, and it just creates that texture. It's so good, that scour. It creates an amazing look of leaves and foliage, so really pleased with that. So I'm mixing up some yellow, touch of blue and some white, and painting in some leaves in the foreground of the daisies here, and it's sort of a light tone, and it's a nice contrast to the darker tones that I had previously printed on with the plastic bag. I'm actually putting a few darks as well, just to counterbalance that with my small round brush, even darker than the background that I've created, using the Prussian blue and any brown really. And I'm just using a little bit of yellow in there, just building up the detail in the foreground here with this round brush. It's a good idea sometimes to let your painting dry and then stipple, as I'm doing here, on top to create more light. And I've allowed the foreground to dry as well, just to paint even more darker tonal values. Because when you half close your eyes, you can see these darks in there in between the daisies in the foreground. Again, it pulls them forward, creating depth and distance. I've decided to use a plastic store card cut up to print some light limey green, that's yellow with a tiny touch of blue and some white, and I'm printing it onto the dry surface of the painting to create some light stems, especially with the Queen Anne's lace. And you can, if you look carefully at the photograph, you can see that detail. So I'm using detail to create depth in my painting, and just keep tapping the paint and applying. If it gets a bit blobby, maybe tap it on a bit of rough paper to start with there, but it's good fun to do. And you can also do this with paper card as well. I've used old birthday cards before as well. It's quite good fun. So I've mixed up a little bit of cadmium yellow and some white titanium, and I'm using a small brush, painting a little bit of light on the top of the centre of the daisies to bring them to life. Tonal values and lights and darks really do create depth in a painting, to make them look more 3D. So just a little dash of light yellow on top of those will really bring your daisies to life. So I've allowed my painting to dry, and I'm painting a second layer on the top of the petals. Some of the petals I will leave alone though, because it's got that sort of underpainting white and it looks like shadow, so it creates some depth with these daisies. So I'm just sort of using this small brush and applying just neat white titanium paint. I'm also making some small marks for daisies that look like they're off in the distance as well. I'm using white titanium with a small flat brush, taking the excess off on my paper towel there, and I'm sort of scrubbing a little bit here, sort of a dry brush effect, just on the surface, the dry surface of the water there, to create a little bit of light on the water, which will bring that forward as well. And it's rather attractive. So it's just creating some light there, some detail, mostly on the foreground and middle ground water. Because I painted some of the white daisy petals on top, I lost some of the dark details from the centre, so you might want to leave that till last. So I'm just filling in with a small detail round brush here. I've actually added some pink to my brown and the yellow as well, and just painting some little darks there to make the daisies look more 3D, and to sort of give that detail that it pulls them forward to again create depth in my acrylic painting. I've allowed that to dry, and I'm using a liner brush, which is not unlike a rigger, and they're very sort of thin, long-haired brushes, and they're great for painting long, thin lines, which are good for these stems here. And I'm just sort of painting those here and there, just to kind of attach a stem to my main daisies, to give them a little bit of structure. And I thought my painting might need a little bit, not so much a focal point, but a little bit of life in the painting with some birds in the distance. I painted a very, very small one nearest to the horizon where it's furthest away, and it's lighter in tonal value and small. And as I get away from the horizon, nearer to the foreground, the birds get bigger, slightly more detailed and slightly darker to finish off the painting. So here is the finished painting. I really hope you enjoyed this and that it will inspire you to have a go at a landscape. Doesn't have to be this one, but something where it's got distance, middle ground and foreground, and you try and use some of these tools, aerial perspective tools, to create depth and distance. And if you like this tutorial and you'd like to see more like it, and you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, where you will get updates of my latest tutorials. Thank you so much for watching. Happy painting. Bye for now.